making sure that everybody knows. Thank you, Mimp. We are live on YouTube, and making sure everybody knows that we're having these events and when the events are coming. The jams every week, typically. In the summertime, we've been taking a week off here and there. So please do share yourself on your social media. We'll grow the community. And today we will be, for Wednesday Web Jam number 69, talking about empathy. And this is, we're calling it the Empathy Tent. My name is Marc Bolick. I'm joined by my lovely colleague, Anupa Dasgupta. And we are going to have some fun and actually serious fun, I think, about digging into empathy and kind of we want to explore what empathy actually means a little bit in this session. So that the kinds of things that we're going to be exploring are, what is empathy really? What does it feel like to do empathy? And how do you know you're empathizing? And many of us in this community are designers, design thinkers, innovators. We believe in human-centeredness in what we do. And empathy is part of the secret sauce, if not the secret sauce that we use as we try to design a better world. And this session was inspired by my own experience a couple of years ago when I went out to the west coast of the United States in Oregon, the Northwest, in a town called Eugene. And I came across this thing called the Empathy Tent. I saw it across a market and I was like, wait a minute, I got to go over there. That looks really cool. And so there was this gentleman sitting down with two chairs. He had a chair and there was an open chair. And there was this sign, empathic listening. What's on your mind? Be heard. And so I sat down, or I was there. This is my father. We were walking around and we chatted with this guy to try to find out, hey, what is going on? And apparently, he said, this is just a place that we have set up. The organization that coordinated this is called the Oregon Network for Compassionate Communication. And we'll put that link in the chat just shortly if you're interested. And the gentleman there sets up the tent before the market starts, and he's just there to listen to people. And that was super inspirational to me, is just the idea that you could just be there as a sort of a vessel to receive somebody's thoughts and their emotions and the things that they're dealing with, and that the other person, as our colleague Emma Jeffries puts it, empties their bowl into the other person's bowl. And I think that's just such an amazing thought and human thing to do. And as I was preparing this session, what I noticed in my photo was this little notebook that he has in his hand. And in that notebook, this is what he's written on the notebook: reflections, connections, suggestions, needs met, feelings shared. And I think he's just taking notes about his experience as a listener, as he is there to just be able to receive other people's emotions, connections, feelings, the things that they're sharing. And I think it's just a beautiful thing in general, the idea of an empathy tent. So we wanted to create that kind of experience here and really use that as a mechanism for us to explore empathy as we go forward. So I'm going to hand it over to Anupa to get us prepared.
Thank you, Marc. So when Marc told us this story, I thought, it's a great session to share because there's so much that you can learn from yourself and from others also. And because empathy is such a sphere that it talks about compassion, it talks about finding insights and understanding within other people. There is this element of emotional identification. And for me, sometimes it's also logic. So we were doing a bit of reading and we found that Daniel Goleman, who's written the book called Emotional Intelligence, has three steps or three identifications of the different kinds of empathy. So the first one is cognitive empathy, where you imagine yourself in the state of the other person. and you understand and you try to understand what they are feeling and saying. The second one is the emotional empathy, where you're completely physically involved in that emotion. So if you see somebody crying, you're feeling their emotion and understanding and trying to see what they go through. And compassionate empathy is above all, and you're actually trying to help them physically after understanding their situation. And I think that is the beauty of understanding empathy, is that you're always trying to see how you can place yourself in the other person's shoe in different aspects, in different capacities, whether it's a behavior, whether it's a situation. And in today's session, we'd like you to kind of utilize these, I would say, frameworks in the way that you best find it. And I'll tell you more about our session. Marc, can we go to the next slide, please? So the first thing we want to do is to select your space. So we have 3 roles that we're offering today. The first is of a listener, a person who will just listen to the emotion, listen to the stories, listen to the words, just listen to what the other person is saying. The sharer will just pour their heart out, share about your emotion, about your thoughts, about what you're feeling. So that is what the sharer does. So these 2 roles would be enacted out in the breakout rooms. Participants who feel that they'd like to just share in general in the plenary can opt for that option as well. So we would like you to change your name to either listen or share. So we know that how we can put you into breakout rooms. Marc, can I have the next slide?
Yeah, and if you want to stay in the main room, you can change your name to discuss. We don't actually need your first name, last name, doesn't really matter. Share, listen, or discuss, and that way I can create the breakout rooms appropriately.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, there's how you do it.
Yeah.
So if you don't know how to change your name, your little image on the Zoom screen has a little 3 dots next to it. You click on that, and then you get a little menu, click on rename, and then just type in share, listen, or discuss, and we'll proceed accordingly.
So I'd just like to talk a little bit about the roles that you would be adopting now. So as a sharer, we would want you to know that you're in your comfort zone. Be as open as you want. Trust yourself, trust your partner. Do not share anything that you feel uncomfortable about. There are no obligations, there is no boundaries. So share as your heart desires. So that's the first slide. The second slide would be about the listener. So this is something which is a bit more action oriented. The thing that you need to do is just listen. Do not speak, do not talk. First listen. It's important to listen because we want you to just take in whatever the sharer is saying, have a perspective of what you're going to say later on. So it's very important that you just attentively listen. Do not react. You're there to listen, to be there for that person and to embrace that kind of silence. So let them speak through their eyes, through their words, and trust your partner. So that's the role of, yeah.
Yeah, and if I can just say this is going to be very hard for people like myself, and I'm kind of extroverted, to just be quiet. Embrace the silence and listen. And when I say listen, most people who are in this sort of facilitation world would say, oh, active listening. No, just listen. What we want you to do is just listen to the person. Let them empty their bowl into your bowl, receive it, and then we will tell you what comes next. So it's very hard to be the listener, also hard to share, but Anupa is going to introduce an important tool that we want you to use.
So Marc and I, we were in discussion on, how and like, how do you share? We have people who know each other. we have people who don't know each other, and everybody has their own level of comfort. And it's important for us as the Web Jam team to bring that psychological safe space for you. So what we've done is that we have created an indicator. So from 1 to 10, 1 is not personal at all. You can choose what is personal to you. 4 to 6 is good to share. We suggest that that is something that would be nice and comfortable for a jam like this and give in the given time. And 10 would be highly personal. So when you're in your discussion room, just take a piece of paper and a pen and just jot down your number and then maybe share it with your listener. So that is one of the things that we would like you to do, as just a tool that would help you, be free and open, with your partner in your room. And the next slide, we would like you to, okay. So yeah, Marc, would you like to take over?
Sure, sure. So what we're going to do is we will put you into breakout rooms, as Anupa said, in pairs, and you're going to have about 20 minutes. So try to spend your first 1 or 2 minutes to introduce the person who is sharing, the sharer, introduce maybe the topic and what level on that scale, and we recommend sort of in the middle, that you will be sharing. And then the receiver, the listener, agree that that's okay to talk about that. It needs to be a safe space, a comfortable thing. That's totally up to both of you. And then the person sharing, the sharer, share your experience. Like, for example, you could talk about a challenge you're having at work, or you could talk about some sort of personal challenge that you're trying to push yourself into, like maybe running a marathon or something like that. Maybe you don't talk about, your personal relationship with your spouse. That's maybe a little bit too far into the 10 scale. So try to make it something comfortable for everybody, because we are just trying to explore what empathy is. So we'll have, again, about 20 minutes total. At the end, it'd be great if you could have 4 or 5 minutes. I will send a message in the breakout room. Look for a little message coming at the top of your Zoom screen with 4 or 5 minutes left. And then you can turn from that sharing and listening phase into the phase of what was that like for the two of you. And then we'll come back into the plenary. And at the end, we'll have a group discussion. So that what's really important is that you try not to just have a discussion in the breakout room. Otherwise, that will be the same experience that you have all the time. This is an empathy tent. The listeners are there, like that guy in the picture, sitting with the sign up. I'm ready to listen. I'm ready to receive. The sharers are experiencing what it's like to receive that gift of listening. So we want you guys to lean into that. And with that, I think we hopefully are going to be good. It will take me a minute to set up the breakout rooms. And as I do that, what I do notice is that there are a lot of listeners and not so many sharers, which is not surprising. We had expected that. Let me, Anupa, can you, or Yunyan or somebody, make some music in the background, and I'll get this going really quickly.
Yeah, something like la 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 la.
If anybody
la,
has a beautiful
la.
voice, they can sing also.
Okay, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, I've not so many sharers. So if anybody wants to change to a sharer, please feel free to do that.
I want to change into a sharer.
Okay.
That's 1 then.
All right, thank you. Right.
Should I have?
Definitely failing forward.
I can pick and choose somebody to become a sharer. Would you like me to do so?
That may be.
Union, we have to exercise empathy and
Oh,
feel
excuse me, wrong jam. Sorry.
we have to be in their shoes.
Yeah, I think we're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah, just a second. So for if you're not familiar how to change your name on Zoom, just take your cursor and hover it over your little video window, and you'll see a little blue box pop up with 3 dots. Click on that box, and in that pop-up menu that comes up, you'll see an option to rename, and you click on that, and that's how you can rename yourself.
Okay. We're getting there. Let's see, what do we have? Share, listen. We obviously screwed up here. We should have had somebody doing this in the background, but we'll get there. I'm just trying to put everybody.
Mark, you can change. I've changed my name to Shara. I can go into a breakout room.
Who are you?
Me, your co-host.
Anupa. I have a sharer without a listener. Let's put that person up here. Number 10. Okay. All right. And I think I've got everybody in pairs. And then there's a number of people who I've got this person here. Share, listen. Okay. So there's a bunch of people who are just listeners who we can put you in separate breakout rooms later. And I will add some additional rooms in case we want to do that. But I'm going to put everybody in breakout rooms. If you end up as 2 listeners, maybe just pick somebody who's going to share. We'll see you back on the other side in about 20 minutes. Bye-bye. And if you're unfamiliar with doing Zoom, you'll have to accept to move into a breakout room if indeed that is the case. Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Sorry, I'm trying to get everybody in the breakout rooms.
Yes, I come back here, but
So you're welcome to just have a chat here, or as I bring other people back into the main room, we can have a discussion.
I'm listening. I don't know if I have to come back to the breakup room.
Were you in a breakout room with somebody?
Yes, I was, but I read the message and I come back here, but I don't know if I have to stay there.
Mariana, let's see if I have somebody I can put you in a room with. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right, everybody. Let's have a chat about empathy. Welcome some new faces, Garth and Shane and Natalie and Mariana. This is Wednesday Web Jam, in case you're not on the right flight. And we have a motto, failing forward. So this is a sort of an experimental forum that we have. And this is the first time we've done this empathy tent thing. So learn some lessons about how to set this up and how to run so that it runs more smoothly. So sorry if you're not getting the experience that you signed up for, but if you're willing, we can have a quick chat here. We are on YouTube, but it would be great just to have a quick chat about what empathy is and what it's like for you guys. Any thoughts?
The beautiful thing about walking into a situation like this and having no expectations is you can't be disappointed.
Ah, good. Love it. Thank you for your empathy, Shane.
Absolutely.
They left me all by myself in my room, so I was a sharer. Do you need someone to share?
If somebody wants to go with
or do you need a sharer?
Federico, we have 2 sharers. Does anybody here want to go into a breakout room? I can probably put you into a breakout room.
I'll listen.
Okay, Natalie? And
Oh yeah, I don't want to steal anybody else's listening role that has it officially on their name. So happy to go where it's needed.
yeah, let me see if I can get, I have to find where Federico, you're, yeah, this is the problem. Can't see people's names. Yeah, this is
person connected with that camera and then he disconnected.
aha, I see you now. Okay. Let me put you, I'm going to put you in a room, Federico, and then I'll put Natalie, I'll put you in there with him.
Thanks, bud.
Let's see. Maybe this will work. Cool. Okay. Let's just have a chat amongst ourselves and animate this a little bit. Manfred, what do you think empathy is?
Well, I think empathy is, well, it is certainly listening is a key element, and I would even say active listening is a key element, because you need to emotionally participate with the person you're listening to. It is a process that is supposed to be not judgmental.
Yeah.
And it's not sympathy. It's often a little bit mixed up with sympathy. No, it is not sympathy. I can be emphatic with you and understand where you're coming from and what you're going through and everything. I don't necessarily have to sympathize with it. I don't know if that rounds it up a little bit.
I want to dig into this idea of that it needs to be active listening, because I think that's a tendency. But what I loved about the empathy tent that I saw was, my understanding is it's passive listening. It's just, and I don't think that it has to be, but I think it's a very delicate line that you cross when you start interacting with somebody, at least in the empathy tent idea, because then it becomes so it turns, then you're kind of getting into somebody's story, you know what I mean?
But if you're only passive, then it's not an interaction. Yeah,
and that's okay.
Well, you just said to be interactive, so you can't have both at the same time.
You know, I think I've seen some interesting examples of this on social media lately, where people will post something, but they're very clear that I'm not seeking advice. I don't want people's opinions, but I would like to, have some, not necessarily feedback, but support. So people are looking for support in the situation that they find themselves in, but they're tired of hearing everyone's advice, especially on social media. We all tend to be experts on any number of topics that we don't have a background in, and we're there, especially those of us who identify as fixers. We want to help somebody fix a situation that they're in, and the people setting boundaries as they're making these declarations is, I just need support.
Yeah.
I don't need someone to fix the situation. I don't need advice. I don't need, armchair doctors or anyone else to come in and assess this situation. I just need to feel supported. And I think at the core, that's kind of a very empathetic response. Well, you're hearing. People acknowledge that they see that you're hearing them, and they feel supported by your actions. You're not trying to fix them. You're not trying to solve the situation. You're simply identifying with their emotional state and understanding.
Interesting. So, well, Shane, when you say supporting, I'm not sure I'm really interpreting what you mean by supporting, because if you feel, you're saying you feel in this case you would feel supported if somebody just listens and notes.
A a heart react, is a sign of support. I think when the difference, I think, between the passive listening, active listening, in a situation where we can see each other, a head nod, a facial expression, something where you're not prompting, you're not asking open-ended questions, you're not guiding the conversation. You're simply, sending out signals that you understand and you hear. I see that as support. In non full duplex communications where you can't see each other, statements like I understand how you feel. That must be frustrating. Things along those lines where you're not guiding the conversation, but you're displaying support for the situation or the person's emotions, essentially.
Yeah, it reminds
reaffirming kind of comment. Okay.
This reminds me of a short video that we use sometimes in our workshops to illustrate the importance of diversity of thinking. And it's a little bit risky to use in a workshop, but it's not about the nail. And just write that down and watch it after so you can Google it. It's a little tiny video and it's really funny, a little bit edgy, but it really illustrates this point about listening versus problem solving. And it's meant to say the video in essence is a woman who's trying to share a problem with her husband. And she has a nail in the top of her head. It's a little bit weird. And then she talks about like how when she pulls her sweaters over her head, the sweaters get caught on her nail. And he's like, you've got a nail in your head. That's the problem, right? And she's like, stop solving the problem. Just listen to me, right? And I think that's just an illustration of how hard it is for problem solvers, like you're saying, Shane, to shut that off and just take in what people are sharing. And for me, that little video is a great illustration of that. What does everybody else think? Michael, I know you have a kind of a background in this. Garth or Mariana, Katie, anybody? New voices?
I don't have any answers, but I'm struck. For me, I feel there is a difference between being listened to and being heard. And it was I've not seen the video, but that whole idea of the nail in the head, I could imagine the woman's kind of saying, you're just not hearing what I'm saying. So the man is listened. I've literally listened to the words you've said, but I've not maybe got underneath about what's the unmet or unexpressed need, be that for connection or whatever it is. So I'm also noticing I'm very curious about listening and hearing.
Yeah. And for me, empathy is, I think it's like a layer cake. I think you can listen and then you can actually hear. And then at some point down in a deeper layer, you're actually feeling with. And I think that's the slide that I'm still sharing my screen. Sorry about that. That was being that Anupa shared from the book, the different kinds of empathy. So there's when you're sharing and feeling the same emotions as somebody else. That's a kind of a deep level of empathy. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I want to address the way back to the beginning when we had an overabundance of overabundance of listeners. I think my guess or my speculation is that even though you've done your best to make this a safe environment, we're still a bunch of strangers, and I think probably many of us probably had many topics that we might want to share, and then probably felt like I just don't know who it is I'm going to be paired up with.
Right.
Yeah. But to get to sort of some of your questions, what either how do I view empathy or what do I think it is? I think listening is a part of it. I think it's at the end of the day, it's an act of imagination on my part. So you can't get around the fact that if I was in a session with Shane, if I was in a session with Shane right now, even if I was totally passive, following the direction on the screen, I think that I don't even know what I'd call it, because anyway, Shane would probably end up sharing something different than if he was paired up with somebody else. So I do feel like there is a fine line, but you have to, I guess, get good or get comfortable or get skilled at walking that line so that you are able to literally imagine and literally put yourself in someone else's place, because at the end of the day, it is an act of imagination that's filtered through my lived experience as well. So then the job becomes sort of trying to always monitor yourself or check yourself that you're not, going too far or driving it, as opposed to, feeling it and hearing it. But yeah, there's more than just listening if you truly want to be empathic. Many ways to get there.
How much burden do you take on as a listener to create comfort in that situation?
I think you have to be intentional and sort of out there or push it. You have to make that abundantly clear, and maybe in more than one way.
Other thoughts? We've got a few more minutes before we're going to bring everybody back into this discussion, but this is our little group discussion.
I was going to add something you stimulated there, Garth, when you were speaking, was, and this is obviously true in the physical space more than it is in the virtual space, but I don't think it's exclusive, is if I can sit as you're sitting, can you describe to me? So I'm just noticing Shane for the minute, because he's sitting, what I can see is the way his hand is on his chin, on your chin, I should say, Shane, and so on. And so inquiring into the very detail of someone's physical posture helps me attune physically. So becoming physically empathic, not that I can know what it's like to sit there, but also to notice what it is for me to try and sit like that. And like what you're saying, Garth, it was triggered by the positive intention. So this is not about mimicking or playing a game or anything. It's share with me your experience of your presence here and now as you take that place in your physical space. So notice that would be something I would add to the cognitive, emotional, and compassionate. The physical.
It is interesting over the last year and a half of being on Zoom meetings and the Brady Bunch view of the world we have, to watch how much of that mimicking, not necessarily mimicking, but as people talk and they change posture, they do things, how many other people in the squares end up taking the same posture. And it's been kind of a little game I've been kind of calculating in the back of my head, is how often you'll see a third or half of the people on a call assuming a similar posture. So if I'm sitting here with my hand on my chin, and suddenly 3 or 4 other people are assuming the same posture, it's just an interesting thing. And I don't know how that plays into empathy necessarily, but that human connectedness and that posturing that we do, and our need to feel connected to other people through these virtual spaces, it kind of makes us do these subconscious things that we may not even realize we're doing.
And with that, I'm closing the breakout rooms, and we're going to open this conversation up. It's going to be great to see and hear from people who have been in the one-on-ones. Again, apologies that if you guys wanted to be in that, that you didn't get that opportunity, but we're going to do this again, I think, maybe in the future, in a future jam. So we'll have another opportunity, hopefully. So opening the floodgates, they'll be coming back. I forgot I put a timer of 60 seconds. They'll be back here in a minute. They can also jump back in as they're doing now. So cool. Welcome back, listeners and sharers. Cool. Hi, everybody. Good. Excellent. So, Anupa, how was that? How was that for you?
It was lovely. Thank you, Heather, for making me a part of that experience. We actually had the opportunity to play both roles. I thought being a listener would be very easy, but it wasn't that. It wasn't that easy because since I'm quite talkative and chatty, to just listen, at a stretch, I think it was something that I learned and was quite nice. So I think there are gains on being a listener as well as a sharer.
Awesome. So we have everybody back from the virtual empathy tent. Thanks for kicking it off, Anupa. If anybody wants to share now, it could be really handy for us to be able to see your name now. So if you want to change your Zoom name back to your first name, that'd be really cool, so we can identify you. But that's otherwise it's fine. Any other folks want to share what it was like in the empathy tent?
I could share a little bit. I was really glad because actually I was just in the need to talk to someone. I was in the need to share. Just the right moment. And I was really glad to be listened actually without being interrupted. Because normally we have limited time to say, we try to deliver a message quickly, impactfully, and just up to point. Otherwise, people stop listening, get interrupted, they talk too much. And sometimes it's really nice to have someone listening to you over like 20 minutes monologue. That's a luxury.
Yeah. And they just listened. Is that correct? It was just listening.
And a little feedback, a little acknowledging that they're listening. It's not just screens up, not just screen on, but actually they hear what I'm saying.
Very nice.
Well, thank you.
Who else wants to share? We're here to listen.
I can share something that happened because I had 2 chances, and I spoke about that with my listener. But the first time, the person that got connected, that person had the camera, off, and I felt I've never been into a confessional, but you see that in the movies. I felt that, like speaking to a booth, like a dark booth, that was anything. And I know it was for, technical issues. That person got disconnected, and it was, I wanted to talk, and then I came back. And then I had the second chance. And my listener, it was very good because she listened to everything that I was speaking. And when I finished with talking about, about feedback, that I said, that's it. And I have everything measured for that. And it was more time. So sometimes when you know that the other person is not going to speak, you are more efficient when you open and share. And particularly, I told her about second chances, something that we study about the second chances. So it was very good. And it was a great second chance because we have a great conversation after that. So yeah, that's short sharing of what happened.
Anupa and I don't think we actually even thought at all about whether the video would be on or off. I just think the idea of the confessional, that's just, maybe we can just, instead of Empathy Tent, we just say it's a confessional Wednesday web jam at some point. Thank you, Federico. Who else would like to share? How about, we've heard maybe some people talking about their sharer experience. How about the listener experience?
Before I leave, I'll share. We had a common experience because we got to swap off. One of us talked and then the other one talked. And in both cases, we both wanted to be active listeners. And Juliana was my partner. And one thing that was a challenge for her is I talk really fast being from the Northeast, but she couldn't ask me to slow down or ask clarifying questions. Or if there was a word, because she is practicing her English, that she didn't understand, she couldn't ask me what I meant by that. She just sort of had to guess. So that can be awkward. And I, on the other side, as a listener, I would say I had a similar experience, but for different reasons. She was telling a story and I really wanted to ask questions about her story.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask more about how she felt about things and what that was like. And I had to just sit and hope, that she would bring it up. But the big thing that you mentioned in advance was you have to really trust that the person will bring up what they are comfortable with. So that was a learning for me, is that she ended up talking about things that I would have asked about. So my learning was, in the future, maybe just wait a little longer. That was really helpful.
Thank you, Tricia.
Yeah. I'd love to share something also, which is, it went for way longer than I thought. And so I thought I had said everything by the end of 10 minutes. And then, gosh, there's more time. And Alex was doing a great role by just not saying anything. And I thought, well, I need to continue. And then there's perhaps another layer of what you're talking about that comes out. And then there's still more time, and you go like, oh, what else do I talk about? And you go into a third layer of the situation. And it's funny how I had to be forced just by the silence and the time to actually do it and to go into these subsequential layers. And that was a curious experience. Yeah.
Did you feel like you were the trust or something shifted between those different layers at all? Did you open up more, or did you just tell more detail, or what was it like for you?
I think it was very much self-exploratory, kind of like you're going to a second derivative and you're because there's no one to ask the questions to you and guide you. So you kind of like have to explore the darker recesses of your mind and you can think, yeah, let me also talk about this, and you go on and on, and so that was strange. I wasn't counting on that, and I just let the thing flow. That was an interesting thing for me. I can think that when I do field research for design thinking, also when you're getting probably closer to the end of a longer interview, that's when you get more rich data. Suddenly all the good things start to pop up. And this was better than that. And so I'm trying to think then, how can I reuse this somehow?
When we were in the main room, Pedro, a couple of really interesting topics came up. And one of them was active listening versus passive listening. And I think many of us are familiar with the idea of active listening. And in a way, it's kind of a little bit like what I see. Tricia's comment was, I, as a listener, wanted to hear certain things, ask certain questions. And your experience of like telling whatever you're sharing, whatever you were sharing, it's really hard, I think, for people to get away from the problem solving mode, right? Like if you're telling a thing, or even the questioning mode, and just do the confessional, right? Like the confessional is a great a kind of analogy that, you know, the presumably the priest says, you know, do 10 Hail Marys and you'll be good. But he or she is, mostly he, I guess, right, is listening. And the confessor is just pouring out. And I think what Emma said about the bowl, I think, you know, pouring the story into somebody else's bowl, it's just a really cool analogy. So thank you for sharing that. Any other thoughts? We are here to listen.
Peggy? Peggy wants to say something.
Please.
Click, click, click. Oh, mute, unmute. So since 2001, I have been a professional coach. So I do a lot of listening, right? And active or not active listening, it doesn't matter, listening in a lot of ways. And the minute before, Marc, before when you first gave that analogy of pouring something from a bowl, from my bowl to your bowl, I became extremely negatively reminded about something. And I thought I'd like to share that because I think it is important for some people. I remember I was reminded of several conversations I had had with this one woman. She was not my client. And at some point in time, I remember going to this one woman and saying to her, I don't want to have a friendship with you anymore because I have the impression that you are just taking all of your trash and pouring it onto me and pouring it into my trash can. And I don't want it, you know? And so I think that it is an interesting analogy that somebody says, well, I'm pouring something from my bowl to your bowl. But I do think that us in the professional world, we have to be very careful to remember that it's not our bowl that we're holding and allowing somebody to pour their stuff into our area. It's like a bowl that's outside of our own protected area. And we hold maybe that bowl out there and allow them to pour it in there. And I can take that bowl into me and I can look at what's in that bowl and see it and be quiet during the listening phase, but I don't have to take that bowl on. And I do think that that's really, really important. And for people to think about, you know, when you are taking all that stuff on from other people, to make sure that you protect yourself in terms of what people give you. No? Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think the act of receiving is as important as the act of giving, right? And Federico put in the chat that, you know, you have to protect yourself. So this was a bit of an experiment, kind of dancing a little bit on the edge of risk of people's emotions, of course, but that's a really good point. You know, being conscious of that and having your ability to protect yourself from that, and that it's, you know, some people may say, yeah, I'm happy for you to pour into my bowl, and other people may say, I'm going to put the bowl on the table and watch you pour it into the bowl. So very, very good point. Thank you for sharing that, Peggy. Manfred has his hand up.
Yeah, well, I think Peggy is making a very important point because as a coach myself, I provide for this purpose kind of a temporary trash can. And my own trash can is somewhere else. It's in a different room and it's closed. And I make absolutely certain of that. But it's important then because it allows them to look together afterwards into this trash can and maybe find that the one or the other morsel that might need to be further discussed. And that brings me to the other point that was elaborated on. Is this silence in the concept of listening, because with the silence that you project as a listener, you are in essence encouraging to go deeper, and it may start at a certain level, a conversation, and by providing this purposeful silence, typically the conversation goes then to the next level deeper, and maybe to the next level deeper, until we really discover something that might be worth to really inquire about and evaluate together, and maybe come to some conclusions or define something for the future. That might be one of the outcomes. But I think it's important to also recognize, if you think in your overall personal and professional life, in negotiations, the power of silence is a very, very powerful instrument if it is applied with purpose.
Excellent. That's a great point, and a good closing point, Manfred. Thank you so much. We are approaching the top of the hour here, or the bottom of the hour, I think, if you're in the Indian time zone. And with that, Anupa, would you like to take us out? Thank you guys for experimenting on the empathy tent. It was really a pleasure to be able to experiment with this, and hopefully we'll learn from it and maybe do another iteration in the future. I think it was awesome. I think we only just scratched the surface of exploring empathy. Thank you very much. Anupa.
Yeah, thank you everyone for being a part of the session. I must confess that, I was a bit skeptical because, it is such a space that you don't know how people might react. And I'm so glad that it was so well received. And like Marc said, we've just scratched the top. I'd like to introduce our next session. So we have the speakers here. So if they'd like to talk a little bit more about the session, please jump in.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Anupa and Marc. It was a very wonderful session. And so for our next session, we are going to have a game night. It's going to be a really informal, fun, low stress session. We are going to play games and also make and design games. So I hope to see all of you on our next session. And Yunian, if you want to add something.
Yes, I will be there. So I think it's going to be chaotic. You like it, you come. You don't like it, you still come.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we have one more, another notice that I'd like to share. So Steve from our group, Steve Bozak, he'll be reading this book called The Innovation Capital by Jay. It's a great book, The Innovation Capital. I've not read it, but he's starting to read. If anybody would like to join him in this reading, we will be having a book club sometime in September. So if you could get in touch with Steve, it's Steve Bozak. He's on LinkedIn. It'll be great, and you can take the conversation forward.
Awesome. And then I think we have the crew, right? Anupa? And then one last thing.
Oh, yes, we have. So since you've all been sharing our love with us for so long, and we're at the 29% of this love, we'd like you to help us grow with this love. So it's on the website also, and Marc is going to put it into the chat. So please put in something that you'd like to show us that you love us more.
That's our tip jar.
Yes.
We have just a few expenses like the Zoom and our MailChimp, which is we use for mailing lists and stuff.
And Miro, that we so fondly use.
Miro and mural and all those kind of things. But hey, Anupa, what do you think? Should we call it a jam? And for everybody who anybody who hasn't been here before, we are going to move to the backstage. We are done. We will stop the YouTube recording now, and we'll have another 30